Hello, good evening, or good morning, or afternoon, wherever or whatever time you happen to watch this. It is fairly late here. It is nearing 10 o'clock on a Tuesday evening, actually. And I have to admit that usually by this time I'm kind of ready for bed, but I have a video call arranged for 11:30 tonight. I am not very good with late nights, I have to admit, and of course I'm at the shop tomorrow morning, so the combination of late night, early morning, not so attractive to me. And because the call later tonight would be recorded, I thought that maybe I could just watch it later, because it will be uploaded within 24 hours. But it's the first of a session, and there's a bunch of other dyers who are mainly based in the States, hence that it's so late, because it's 6:30 p.m. their time, and with the time difference that just means it's 11:30 our time. And I kind of thought, oh, it'll be fine, it'll be an hour or so, but apparently it'll be 2 or 3 hours. So I said, I'll just have to see how it goes. But it just meant that, so we had dinner and kind of got ourselves organized and the dog organized and all that sort of thing. And because I'm already set up, I kind of said, you know what, I'm just going to go upstairs and see if I can do some of my planned sort of video content, because that will, if nothing else, it will stop me from going to bed early and just going to sleep. So that is kind of my excuse. So I've been playing with the idea a little while to, do I want to start some kind of vlog or some kind of podcast, or I don't know, maybe this will never get uploaded at this point. I really don't know. But yeah, so I just thought I'd use this opportunity. I'm all set up, I'm awake, I'm trying desperately not to go to bed. I just use this opportunity to come and have a bit of a chat about kind of shows I've got kind of planned or lined up, or I've applied for, and kind of what's happening or not happening at my end. So 1st of March tomorrow, which means we're now on the straight for Spring into Wool here in Leeds, which is on in April, the first weekend in April, 1st and 2nd of April, Leeds Grammar School on Harrogate Road. Really lovely show, and I'm not ready for it, at all. And it will be fine. I sort of have a rough plan in place, but just the actual doing it, I've been struggling with a little bit. So I'm splitting my booth a little bit. So I have a bigger booth than I had at Yarndale. I had a single booth at Yarndale, and I've gone for a double booth at Spring into Wool. But so I'm splitting myself a little bit between my own hand dyed, and then I'm bringing some of the commercial yarns to showcase kind of what I have in the shop in the Corn Exchange. So between that, I'll be fine. But I've just been in a bit of a creative funk, I have to admit, with the whole yarn dyeing thing, and I've sort of had things going on, personal things going on in the background. So my mum's been in hospital for a good 3 months, just with a knee replacement initially, and then she had a fall and another fall and another fall, and she needed 3 more lots of surgery because she's done damage to the leg that she just had the knee replacement on. And so she had been in hospital for pretty much 3 months. She made it back home for 48 hours and then did more damage, had to go in for more surgery, had another fall, needed more surgery, and the decision has now been made that she will need to go into a care home, because so my mum lives on her own. I mean, my sister and her kids live fairly close by. My sister's kind of her sole carer, more or less, but my mum lives on her own, and the doctors have said that is not really possible anymore. That's not going to happen. So that decision has just been made that she will need to go into a home, and finding a place for that now very quickly with someone who has dementia, and who has, because of 3 lots of general anesthetic, has had a real push along in her state and her sort of confused state, that is really quite difficult at the moment. And I think when that decision was made, when my sister called and kind of said, look, that point has now arrived, I think that made me realize that has kind of played on my mind maybe a lot more than I have wanted to admit to myself, because I just haven't felt like going into the studio and dyeing some cheery, colourful things up. And I think sometimes it's easy for people to assume that, well, my family is all in Germany and I'm based in the UK, and you make your choices, and I don't regret any of them. But I think there's that assumption that, like, well, you're not there and you don't have to deal with it on a day-to-day basis, and therefore it must be fairly easy. But it isn't. You still worry, and you still kind of wonder and kind of think about it all the time. But so that's just meant that I'm not as far along as I would have liked to be. And I think there's just been, because I've kind of been preoccupied and kind of just mentally drained to an extent, there's been a bit of decision fatigue in a way on what I want to take, even to spring into wool, and certainly like what I even want to dye. What is the market out there at the moment? Kind of struggling to read the market at the moment with kind of everything that's going on. Obviously we're still in a cost of living crisis, and who knows how much longer that's going to carry on. But I fully expect that people will be more conscious of how much they're spending, what they're spending it on, and quite rightly so. But it comes down to basics like, do I dye up lots of sort of variegated things like Purple Rain, which is on the website at the moment, or do I take sort of more semi-solid dyed yarns with me that people can maybe pair with stuff that may already be in their stash, so I don't know if there's like a big shawl that you want to knit, so then maybe you're not buying 5, 6 or 7 new ones, but you may say, oh well, that may go with, you may want 1 or 2 other skeins to complement what you already have. So that's really difficult. Do you bank on like maybe the sock knitter or the 1-2 skein project knitter, or something, there was a hair, or something more sort of semi-solid. And I have to say that I quite enjoy dyeing these semi-solids, because there's just so much like application for them. And I think especially at the moment we are seeing still, this has been going on for a few years, I think, this kind of a lot of patterns out there that hold a hand-dyed 4-ply or any 4-ply with a lace weight mohair. And I think those often work best on kind of a semi-solid base, especially when I'm kind of thinking, so I don't dye mohair, but I will have, excuse me for a second, I will have some commercially produced and dyed mohair with me. I'll show you a quick example. And that is actually, so before I show you more of that, there has been, like, I don't want to say criticism, but there has been this, if there's a pattern that says hold 4-ply and lace weight together, there has quite rightly been a lot of feedback that said those patterns, to knit them up, actually make that a really expensive project. And that is very true. So I have done an oversized vest where I think I used 2 skeins of hand dyed, but then I used quite a lot of alpaca on it. So I run it double with an alpaca at the time. But I was a bit like, if I would have had to go out and buy that at retail value rather than taking it off my own shelf, I probably would have thought about that twice before maybe making that purchase, because it does make it more expensive, because you buy the base and you buy the same meterage again of that lace fluff to run with it to hold double. And I know a lot of people say like, well, you know, you can, because it works roughly up as a double knit, then you could just substitute it for a double knit, but it's not quite the same, is it? It's not gonna quite give you the same effect. But I do think there are more affordable options out there, and one of them is something like this, where there are patterns that use that yarn combination, but they use it not in the way that it's held double, but it's striped in. So you know, it's using very much a solid, and then the mohair, and then it's just striped, and it's both colors are just held single. And this is kind of the color I have gone for, and this is some of the yarn I will have with me at Spring Into Wool. It's a 4-ply wool silk nylon blend, and then a mohair silk blend, and I have a couple of different, I have 3-4 different sort of color combinations that you can play with and have a look at. And this hopefully will be much bigger by the time we get to Spring Into Wool, because I was hoping to have this finished as a sample on my mannequin. Whether that is realistic at the moment, I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I think it's quite cute. Yeah, so but it's just really difficult, you know, as a small business owner. Obviously I have to buy all that stuff in, you know, it starts with the bare yarn that I have to buy in to even start dyeing, and even just to kind of put a figure on that sometimes, like how much do I even want to buy, because what do you do if you don't sell it? And there's been a lot of discussion with indie dyers as to how viable financially or how profitable yarn shows actually are for indie dyers, because I think some of them have done really, really well in the past, but at the moment that's maybe not the case. But you still have all the same outgoing costs. The booth still costs you the same amount of money, you know, to buy the yarn costs you the same, if not more, because costs have gone up everywhere. Still, you know, costs the same to dye, and the electricity to use that has gone up. But then you might not necessarily at the moment get kind of the same return that maybe businesses had from yarn shows in the years gone past, and in the before times, you know, before COVID. Yeah, so I mean, talking of yarn deliveries, so I had ordered all my undyed yarn, and it arrived while I was out, so my husband took delivery of it. And I mean, you know, why would he know what to expect? But I came home and there's these 2 massive boxes sitting there, and I'm thinking that's a bit odd, because I know they put something like up to 25 kilos into one box, and then if you need to go into a second box, you pay a second lot of courier charges. And I thought, I'm pretty sure I've only paid one, so I don't know, maybe they packed that funny or something. Not even thinking anything about it, and we kind of just on the next day we both head off. We put it in the van, drove it to the studio, literally just dumped it and went back home because we were busy. And then when I was at the studio unpacking it, I sort of opened the first box and I'm unpacking it and counting it against kind of the packaging list and against my order. And I emptied the first box and I kind of went like, okay, that's all there. And then I looked at the second box and I kind of thought, what's in the second box? Like, that everything's there. What is in the second box? And I opened the second box, and it's effectively a duplicated order, so it was exactly the same amount of yarn again. And I slightly panicked, because that was about £1,500 worth of stock, and I kind of went, ugh. So I emailed them very quickly and I said, I think you might want to check your records, but it looks like I have received a duplicate order, and would you like to arrange a courier and collect it? Which they've been very good about, and they said, yes please, we would like to collect that. Um, but yeah, that was a bit of a like, oh goodness me, I hope they'll just. I mean, I kind of said, if I could, I'd buy it at the moment, but like, I can't just. I had budgeted for £1,500 and not £3,000 to buy the yarn in. And it wasn't, it wasn't my mistake. There was some kind of, blip in the system at their end. Um, but yeah, so they are picking it up, bless them. But that was a bit of a like, oh goodness me, that was just awkward because like things like that just make me feel really, really very uncomfortable. So that happened, and the same day I was there's a little shop, parade of shops at the top there where the studio is, and I had gone into the off license for something, and then on the way past the charity shop I had spotted this kind of dog blanket, and because with the puppy she's kind of chewing through everything at the moment, and she's coming to her first season. I mean it's all fun and games here at the moment. um so I kind of walked in and I literally just grabbed this dog blanket. It was just like, fleece material, sort of brown with like lots of paw prints on it. And I kind of put it on the counter and I said, oh, could I just grab this please? And the guy says, oh, that's just £1 then please. And I paid my £1, and I came home, and it was late in the afternoon when my husband came home, that I kind of went like, oh, I got this um for the dog. And then I realized there wasn't just one blanket, there were two blankets, and they were both priced up at £1, so I should have paid £2 and I paid £1. So I felt terrible. So I think the next time I'm going to walk past, I'm just going to chuck in another £1 into the charity box. It's just dreadful, isn't it? I remember I once I got on the bus, and the machine wasn't working at the time, so the bus driver said something like, just pay on your way out or something, and I think I then just got off the bus. But that meant I hadn't paid my £2 bus fare, and I was just, for weeks did I expect like to get on the bus and it to be the same bus driver, and he said like, you're banned from my bus because you didn't pay your £2 fare or something. And not helped by the fact that my husband took great pleasure in calling me a fare dodger for probably 10 days, just making the whole thing worse. But so when a duplicated order of £1,500 lands at my studio, I panicked. I honestly just panicked. So it's going to sit there for another week. So I'll be glad when Parcel Force has been to collect it, and it is no longer my responsibility. I mean, because that's the other thing. What if actually something? I mean, nothing's going to happen to it, but what if? Yeah, it's just one of those things. But so that's Spring into Wool. There's, what else am I bringing to Spring into Wool? So hand dyed, some Lang, some Shopper, some, I think, Opal. I've been busy making stitch markers, and obviously we're in Leeds, and if you're not local to Leeds, the kind of Wahrzeichen, I sometimes just don't know what the English word is, the like emblem of Leeds, I guess, is the owl. So if you walk around Leeds, you'll, and, if you start looking out for it, there's an awful lot of owls around, and that's why. So there's like golden owls on like the town hall. There's lots of owls kind of incorporated into a lot of buildings and things, and a lot of sort of rail, like fencing rails and that sort of thing. There's even a little owl trail you can do in Leeds. You can pick up a little owl trail map, and I think there's 2 paths, but I think you can pick them up for £1 or something at the Tourist Information Centre. But it's kind of a lovely thing to do, and once you start spotting them, you'll spot them all over Leeds. But so kind of picking up on that, I've been making some like little stitch markers and progress keepers of little owls. I've got lots of different ones, but I think this one's my favourite. This little blue one is probably my favourite. So I will have those with me at Spring into Wool. Yeah, there's some other bits and pieces and stitch markers and that sort of thing, and some really cute needle stuffers. Oh, hang on. Little little minty coloured llamas that will pop onto your needles, all that sort of thing. I think I will also have some like seconds, and when I say seconds, what they are is sometimes when I would like to say whenever I dye a colorway, I sit down and do some samples. The reality is that that doesn't always happen, because sometimes I will dye a really short color run. So if I'm only dyeing a pan of maybe 4 skeins, then I can't take really, because what you do is you effectively sacrifice 1 skein of yarn for the samples. And if I'm only dyeing 4, I can't then really waste 1 to cake up and make some samples of. So historically I haven't had a lot of sort of sample squares of my hand dyed yarns, and that's something I'm looking at the moment, on how best to deal with that, to be able to do that. But it does mean that I have an awful lot of these, not an awful lot, there isn't really that many, because quite often they go into my stash and I knit a pair of socks with it, but effectively they are more or less a full 100 grams. I have just maybe used, I don't know, a few grams to knit a little sample and crochet a little sample, just so people get a bit of a better idea of what stuff would look like. But then I have these kind of sitting around, so I think there'll be quite a few of them maybe at the show. And I say quite a few, that, you know, there's maybe going to be like half a dozen or so. I mean, I might find lots more. This is the thing, once I start tidying up, I'll probably find them all, because I've stashed them all away. But there's this one. There will be all my Christmas, the sparkling sock yarn I had dyed up for Christmas. There's all those skeins for that. There's this quite funky orange colour. There's this kind of blue, and on the camera you probably can't see, that's kind of speckled with like orange and purple, because this was my, sorry, I'm looking for the matching mini skeins, because this was a set I had dyed up called Pool Party. So the speckles in there, you can maybe just see on camera, there's like lots of sort of purple and orange speckles in, and it came with 2 20-gram minis, and I haven't even used any of this. I never got round to actually working a sample, so it's caked up. It's just not in skein format anymore. You know, there's stuff like that. There's a couple of other balls where I was obviously, I had intention of maybe doing something with it. So there'll be stuff like that, because there's only so much stash I can get through myself, and it will, you know, it means you can maybe pick up a good bargain and I get some space back in my office, which would be very exciting. But oh yes, so that is spring into warm. Then I have applied for a show also in Leeds. It's a new, it's more of a textiles festival, but there will be some yarn, and it will be held middle of May, Farsley, Sunnybank Mills in Farsley. But the application deadline hasn't passed yet, so I don't expect to hear for a little while whether I've even been successful for that. And then I have applied for Yarndale again, but again, that deadline has, I think that closes today. But yeah, there's always then a bit of waiting game as to whether you've made it in or not. And those will be the only 3 shows, provided I get accepted to all of them. Those will be the 3 shows I'll be doing. My idea was always to really keep the shows local, just because I have the shop, and I need to either close the shop or kind of pay someone to be in the shop, and then it comes down again to how financially viable is it to do a show if I then have to pay someone to keep the shop open for me, you know, like very quickly by the time I pay for my booth and I don't know, my petrol and stuff you need to buy for it. And I guess we're fortunate because we are not traveling very far. Like I don't need to pay for like hotels or something like that, which a lot of indie dyers do. I mean, that's just kind of their business model. They travel around and they stay in hotels or something. Or you know, I mean, it costs a lot of money to fill up a car these days, doesn't it? So the fact that you know everything I'm doing is kind of fairly local is sort of hopefully you know being to my advantage. But also we're driving a really old one. We're driving like a 1965 AZU Citroen with like suicide doors, and it's like really agricultural and loud, and you wouldn't go very far and you don't go very fast in it, and it's very cute, don't get me wrong, it always gets a lot of attention. um but yeah, for anything further afield, you know, we would then actually have to we would have to genuinely look at hiring a van for the weekend, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't make sense anymore. You know, if I have to then spend another 250 quid to hire a van, that just doesn't work. um so yeah, so those are the three shows, and then there is so there's lots of empty spaces in the shop, empty shelf space in the shop at the moment, because all the new stock I have ordered is effectively coming straight to my home address. I haven't told my husband this yet, I've just realised, but all the stock is coming here. Because we're then taking it to Spring into Wall, so there's no point me having it in the shop, then I have to get it from the shop to home to take it with me to Spring into Wall. That just wasn't going to make sense really, so close to the show. So it's coming directly here, and then I can load it from here directly into the van, and then whatever comes back from the show can then go into the shop. But that does mean when you come into the shop at the moment, there's quite a few of sort of empty gaps that I have earmarked quite specifically, because there's a few new things coming in, and just a bit of expansion on colours and kind of what I have on the shelves. But I have been quite worried because I've been saying, gosh, people must be walking in thinking, oh goodness me, she's already closing down. The shelves are half empty. But there is method in the madness. So yes, so I might leave it at this. I hope, like if you've joined me, I hope you've enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments if you'd, I don't know, like to find out more, sort of, you know, if you'd like me to do more of this, or maybe next time I'll bring a project and work on it. I could have been knitting that sample jumper that I'm supposed to be finishing for the show. I think at this point I might go and maybe have that coffee or a cup of tea, and then it's not so long to go until my meeting now, which I'm very excited about. So yes, thank you very much for joining me, and hopefully if I don't see you around in the shop or something, if you're not local, maybe you're visiting one of the shows that I'm exhibiting at, and if you do, please do come by and just to say hello. That would be lovely. So have a lovely evening or a lovely day, and I will see you all soon. Take care. Bye.